It was a Monday morning in March 2022 when 16-year-old Griffin Hoffmann was found unconscious on his bedroom floor.
The first thing I saw was his hand because his dad was holding it, trying to find a pulse, and there was no pulse. And it was just blue.
Investigators later confirmed Carrie Cohen's son overdosed on fentanyl. We sat down with Carrie a few months later, who says her son didn't know what he was taking.
My kid wasn't an addict, you know? He was just doing normal experimentation like any other kid. He was just like a regular teenager.
Weeks after Griffin's death, investigators traced the blue pills found in Griffin's room to 24-year-old Manuel Antonio Souza Espinoza, an alleged third-party drug trafficker in Vancouver. Law enforcement says the fentanyl pills made their way through 2 other dealers before reaching Griffin. Souza Espinoza has been behind bars since his arrest on March 31st, 2022. Nearly 3 years later, inside the federal courthouse in downtown Portland, Souza Espinoza took a plea deal, changing his plea to guilty in exchange for the government to not seek the 20-year mandatory minimum sentence. The 2 charges he faced: conspiracy to distribute and possess with intent to distribute fentanyl that resulted in death of a minor, and possession of a firearm in furtherance of a drug trafficking crime, could have imprisoned him for life if he was handed the maximum sentence. But Wednesday morning, after pleading guilty, lawyers recommended 13 years in prison and supervised release. We reached out to Souza Espinoza's attorney, who said he has no comment at this time.
I mean, it doesn't do anything for me. He obviously did a very bad, selfish, greedy thing, which is he sold poison under the guise of something else and didn't consider that that was not only going to kill people, but might have killed kids, which is, you know, what happened to my son.
Souza Espinoza's large family, including young children, showed up to the hearing. Carrie did too.
He had a lot of family there. That was both surprising and, you know, nice. I mean, I look forward to the sentencing because that means they'll all be there and when I get to talk.
Souza Espinoza did not finish high school and he is not a U.S. citizen. The judge warned his guilty plea means it's extremely likely he would be deported. Court documents say that's practically inevitable.
I think he made, you know, really terrible choices. He didn't look my kid in the eyes and hand him the drugs. If he had done that, maybe I'd feel differently. And maybe I'll feel differently about the person who did that if and when we go after him.
Meanwhile, Carrie keeps her son's memory alive by sending this message to families.
There's a lot of misunderstanding around all of these horrendous fentanyl deaths that are happening all over the place. And it's a very layered, complicated situation. He was just a 16-year-old experimenting with drugs. That's all that happened, you know. It was one pill. It was one little pill. And he thought he was just gonna, you know, feel good, go to sleep, wake up, go to school the next day. And he had no idea he was gonna die.
Griffin would have turned 19 years old in February. As for Souza Espinoza, his sentencing date is set for June 20th. The judge said even though the recommended sentence is 13 years in prison, she doesn't have to follow that, and he could still face 20 years or life behind bars. No cameras or recording devices are allowed inside federal court, so that's why we didn't show you any of the actual hearing. But I mentioned that Souza Espinoza's family was there. They took up much of the courtroom. He smiled to them when he entered and blew a kiss to the children when he was escorted away. Now, as I sat behind them this morning, I witnessed another family impacted by the crime he committed, his own. I asked his family if they would talk with me. They were angry and said no. They thought the media didn't care about their side of the story. But I believe it's an important one to tell, to show yet another aspect of the deadly fentanyl crisis in the Pacific Northwest. So we'll see if they end up changing their minds about talking either before sentencing or the day it happens in just over 3 months.